A grabar. Bueno, muchísimo gusto, muchas gracias
It's a
por
great pleasure.
acudir a este llamado.
Thank you very much for
Es un
coming,
placer
following
para
this
la
call.
Universidad para la
It is a
Cooperación
great pleasure for our
Internacional de Costa
University
Rica
of International Cooperation of
ser
Costa Rica
anfitriones
to be
de
hosts
una iniciativa
of this initiative,
pionera mundial en
pioneer
regeneración
on a
urbana
worldwide scale for urban
en
regeneration,
para poder empezar este proceso de
in order
regeneración en
to be
nuestras
able to
ciudades, desde
start
nuestras
with this
ciudades.
process of regeneration
Entonces,
within our
agradecemos
cities,
mucho
starting from our
a
cities.
todos por
So we
haber
thank you all
atendido a este llamado.
greatly for joining us,
Hoy vamos a
for
tener
hearing, following this
una
call
sesión
today.
un
We will
poco
have a session which will be between
práctica, tratar de
something
conocernos
practical, trying to
y
get to
tener
know
una
each
visión un
other,
poco general de
and
lo que significa
acquire a
esto,
general
que hoy
vision
estamos
of what it
llamando
means.
regeneración
We
urbana.
are referring to as urban
¿Cómo
regeneration,
podemos entonces
and how it
empezar
is that
acciones
we can
desde las ciudades
start to move into action
para
from the
participar en
cities
esto que
in order
llamamos
to
regeneración?
participate
Porque
from
muchas
this
veces
we
cuando
call
escuchamos
regeneration, but very often when we
mirar a
hear
gente solo como
this, we
agricultura
think only of
o como
agriculture
bosques, ¿verdad?
or
Como
forests,
simplemente la
right?
restauración
Or
ecosistémica,
simply
pero en
restoration of
realidad es mucho más que
ecosystems.
esto. La
But it is
regeneración
truly much more
eh,
than just that.
reconectarnos
Regeneration
como a
comes
los
to
seres humanos
reconnect
como
us
seres
as
vivos, como
human
seres
beings,
planetarios.
as living
Y donde
beings,
más
as
hay una
planetary
concentración
beings.
en las
And the
ciudades y en
place
los
where
pueblos,
most humans are
entonces
present
es
is
una
within
acción
cities
profunda
and
de
villages. Therefore, it is
conectarnos
a
con
deep
estos
action of
territorios
understanding
urbanos
and connecting
para
with the urban
comenzar este proceso
territories
de
in
regenerativo
order
en
to
tantas
start
personas
the
en los
regenerative
sitios donde
processes
vivimos la
of so
mayoría
many
de los seres
people in the
humanos.
places where most of
Entonces,
human beings
pues
live.
quiero primero introducir
So
el
first of all, I would
programa,
like to introduce
panelistas, a nuestros
our speakers,
compañeros
our
en esta
companions
odisea. Primero
in
reconocer
this
a nuestro
odyssey.
director, Edward
First of
Miller,
all,
que
I
estará
want
con
to acknowledge
nosotros, uno de
Edward
los grandes
Miller,
pioneros de
our director,
regeneración
one of the great
en,
pioneers of regeneration on a
mucho
worldwide
énfasis en
scale,
Latinoamérica.
and with a
Muchísimas
great
gracias, Edward.
emphasis on Latin
Y
America. Thank you very much,
dando la
Edward.
bienvenida a Elías
And
Catán, que ha
welcome
sido el
Elias
promotor
Catan as
de
well, who
esto,
has been promoting
un
this.
urbanista
He's a
maravilloso
friend
que
and a
vive en la Ciudad
marvelous
de México
urbanist who
y
lives in Mexico City,
pues una ciudad la más
and
grande de
it is one of
Latinoamérica,
the largest city
poniéndole
of Latin America,
para
putting
hacer estos
all of
procesos y
himself
ayudando
in order to
a
make these
Karina
processes
Licea, que
happen.
también está en
Karina
México
Licea, who's
y
also in
que
Mexico
trabaja con
and
todos los
who
procesos
works
de
with all the
regeneración
processes
urbana
of
presentes en
regeneration
México a
on a
muchos
urban
niveles.
space that are taking
Tenemos otros
place within
panelistas
Mexico on
también
many
conectados,
levels. We
como
have
es
other
John Takara,
speakers
que estará con
invited, just
nosotros.
as
Muchísimas gracias,
John
John,
Takara, who is with us
por
today. Thank you
acompañarnos.
very much, John, for joining us today.
Gema Santana también,
Gemma Santana,
Lily
also
Foster.
Lily
Y si
Foster.
quieren ustedes poner un poquito
If you want
un letrerito que diga
to
panel,
put
panelistas,
change your
para
name
que
as a
también los
speaker
puedan
so
ahí
everyone
identificar, sería
can
genial.
know, identify you.
Muchísimas
It would be
gracias.
great. Thank you very much.
Y bueno, estamos entonces, vamos a hacer una presentación
And
muy
we
corta
will
de quiénes somos.
introduce briefly
Damos inicio a Elías.
ourselves.
Luego
So
vamos a hacer una
Elias,
pequeña actividad entre
I
todos
invite you. Then we will
y
move into an
terminaremos
activity
con
all
una
together.
sesión de una
And
presentación
we
pequeña,
will end
una
with
sesión de
a brief
preguntas para que todos
presentation
podamos
and a
activar
question round so
qué
we
es
can
esta
all
forma actual de
activate
regeneración en
what
las
it
ciudades.
is, how we can
Bienvenido,
act
Elías.
within the regeneration within cities. Welcome, Elias.
Mil gracias, Meli.
Thank you very much,
Empezamos
Meli.
por Edward, ¿no?
I believe we start
Sí,
also
para
with
empezar con esta
Edward and
dinámica
the
de
UCI
regeneración.
before we move into the dynamic of
Preséntate al
regeneration.
panelista, dale.
Of
No,
course, go
simplemente
ahead. Well, I
darles la
simply
bienvenida
want
a
to
todos los participantes.
welcome all of the
Eh,
participants.
lo que decía Meli es cierto,
Just as Melina was
un
saying, it
enfoque
is
muy grande
very true that there is a great
vinculado a
focus
regeneración al tema agrícola, al
of
tema de permacultura,
linking the
pero la
regenerational
verdad es que la mayoría nosotros
word
vivimos
to
en ciudades
agriculture. But
y
truth is that
tenemos
most of
que
us live within cities. Therefore,
generar un
we need
bienestar
to
donde
generate
vivimos. Las
well-being
ciudades se han
wherever
ido
we live.
deteriorando
And the cities
junto
have
con
been
los ecosistemas de la ciudad,
uh,
incluyendo
depleting
muchos
along with
animales
the
que están
ecosystems
cerca.
within cities, along with the main inhabitants, human beings. And we need to shift that if we want to have a shift towards regenerational future. We cannot only regenerate sources of food, but also the cultural, political dimension need to be regenerated, the social and economical dimension. And all of that comes from our national centers of institutional governance that are settled here within the cities. But in many of our cities, and Costa Rica is a great example of that, we have turned our back to the cities where human beings live. We have developed cities for vehicles and for shopping centers and commerce, but not for humans. And I believe that it is something that has alienated us from the balance that we need. So I want to thank the speakers, and especially my great friend Elias, my dear Melina, to hold on to this and not let go of it, which has been challenging. But there is a great future. And from UCI, we really wish to accompany all of those who wish to transition towards how we can impulse regenerative processes in the urban areas. So once again, now the word is yours, Elias.
No, que de verdad gran gusto.
Thank you. It is truly a great pleasure to be here. These monthly calls from the region communities. When we come together, we came together for the first time in Michoacán, thanks to Laura Quero. I want to thank everyone for being here and believing in that regeneration has to be a characteristic of life, and it also should be a urban characteristic. And I would like to thank deeply Kari as well. We have been, I believe, collaborating for 15 years now. We started picnicking by the riverside in order to be able to bring this workshop to the light on a wide spectrum of weaving a community. And Meli, my dear, thank you very much. You've done everything perfectly for this to be a reality in our noosphere, our internet, to bring together all those interested in improving life a bit, because urban life is also, just like we said previously, as in Mexico City, but we gather around working, collaborating in urban spaces where there are around 50,000 people living on small villages. Patty, would you like to introduce yourself? Afterwards, we will move to the speakers and then we will move into the material. Thank you everyone for being here. Hi, everyone. I want to thank you all for your time and dedication for being here today. I'm really, really glad to see so many faces because we truly need everyone's help to shift the planet we live in. As Elias was saying before, we've been working on this for 15 to 20 years now. The urban processes generally are difficult ones, are slow, and we lose our patience. Sometimes we can't reach what we are aiming for. And still there is always hope, and we always hope to reach, make some changes, and we have, at least in Mexico City. It took us 10 years to make a bike road in the Reforma area, and we did it. The recovery of the Piedad River has been done for 20 years. We have been able to rescue 2.6 kilometers. It's something. There is a lot of hope, and we wish that through this workshop, many of us, even us, can learn how to implement in a wise way these projects in such a way that we can move backwards all the damage we have done to the cities and the places of origin, so we can rescue everything that is so necessary nowadays. When, for example, in Mexico City, we have so many problems because of climate change with water, and even temperature. We were not used to having this temperature we have currently. So to adapt Mexico City to this will be a great challenge, but we believe that with this learning process we will go through, along with everyone's help, like I've said previously, we will be able to do it. So I'm so happy to see so many faces, and hopefully we will succeed in something very specific, concrete, and spreading this information for everyone on the planet. Thank you, everyone.
Gracias, Cari.
Thank you, Karim.
Nos acompañan panelistas.
So we have speakers.
¿Quieren presentarse?
Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Tantito, Lili, Gemma, John.
Lily and Gemma, John.
Go first. Sin nervios, en un aliento o dos.
Don't be nervous. You can briefly say something.
I will say something. Shall I say something briefly in English? Is that okay, guys? Yeah. So hello, I'm actually speaking to you from London, but I live in France, but I'm a Brit, and I'm celebrating my first grandson here in a very rainy city. So sorry to be so late, but I've just known for so many years the work of Elias and his colleagues. More recently, I've met Edward and his extraordinary work with the university. And my basic starting point for joining this workshop is that everything is beginning to move right now. In my life, it's been many years. So I'm just so excited to be with you all in just pushing the door, which is ready to be open. And I just wish everybody a fantastic journey in this workshop. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, dear John. Building the good mafia. Thank you.
Hola a todos.
Hi, everyone.
I'm Lily Foster, the founder and director of Phoenix Farms. Also, my associate Dana Gutierrez is here today, and we work in the field of regenerative agriculture. So we've been working in Mexico City now for about 18 years, and we work in the countryside and in the city. And the city has always been really such an important place for us. Voy a cambiar a español porque creo que la mayoría son hispanohablantes.
I'm going to shift to Spanish now. So cities are places, 73% of Mexico live from this country live in the city. So I believe that for us, the city is like an epicenter. It's the habitat of human beings in the future. If you look at all the tendencies, and it's really moving towards people living in the cities. So if we can understand how we can generate ecology, not only food, but also how we can generate business, community businesses, how we can produce medicines and value chains, not only produce because of what the city needs, believes that it needs nowadays. It's not about just growing a couple of lettuces on your window, but it's a project much more systemic and transformative on how we can generate spaces that are highly productive in nutrition and also economy and also new community links. So for us, this system of food is where all these pieces come together. We have other experts that will be talking about transport. So we have some access where we can reach an amazing impact within cities, even if it's a project or a community. We have the possibility of impacting many, many people. So although cities are chaotic and have their complexities, to us, it is also an epicenter where we can succeed with systemic changes that can have an impact not only within the cities where we work, but also within sister cities and other places. So we are very excited of being part of this panel. Thank you, Elias, for making this happen. We admire the other companions that will be present. speaking as well. And for all of you who are thinking of whether you want to join or not, I believe it is a unique opportunity. With what is going on with institutions that are a few years or many years behind us of what is going on daily on the market. So it is believed it is a great opportunity to establish links with professionals, with people who are doing changes in real time in this moment of so many changes and possibilities. Crises are always possibilities for change. So I'm really happy to be here. We will be talking about agroforestry within cities to see how we can generate commerce and habitat there.
Gracias, Lili. Gemma,
Gemma?
¿estás por ahí?
¿Me escuchan? Ah, perfecto. Bueno, pues me encanta
Well,
estar aquí.
I'm very happy to be here to see so many known faces of people I admire. Thank you, Elias, for inviting me for this initiative. Truly, for me to share with Meli, with Kari, and with so many people who will be participating during this workshop is really relevant. I will surely learn a lot. I will transform my vision. I'm a social environmental strategist. I'm trying to reduce the gaps within civil society so we can understand the streets in order for the cities to be able to evolve. Nowadays, we are living a climate crisis because of the bad management and planning of cities and resources. And just as Lily said a moment ago, most of people who live in our country are living in cities. If we do not know how to redesign the places we live, so the hot places won't be as hot, we truly need to transform these cities for them to be livable. We are starting to be in cities that are not livable. It is now a public health issue. These are national security issues. So bringing this agenda on a very high level for all the governance levels but also of political will, especially, and citizen participation and private sector. So it is a multi-sector work, but it is also of a citizen level of consciousness we need to reach. So this workshop will help us to understand the basics of the street and how these local changes can create transformation on a city scale, very important ones. So great of the things that I'm working on to make this gap smaller, translating this conversation with different actors by talking with politicians and governments, senators, presidents of the local governments, future mayors of Mexico City. We are now in a moment of the greatest elections of the country, and this has to be as a priority on the agenda because we need to reduce the impacts of climate crisis and to prepare and be resilient. Resilience is to work from the streets. So all of this vision has a systemic impact, and this local vision of the street, if we can impact not only the city, but the public and private sector and the local governments, but also on a federal level and on a level of states. We need to start moving forward with this vision in order to have models that function and we can replicate and explain them in such a way that people won't say, oh, it's not just about an energetic transition or transition towards a regenerative agriculture. It's not just about talking about the soil or the quality of the air or having access to water. All of this depends on how we rebuild cities, how we work on the streets. That's why it is fundamental to take this workshop. We will try to translate all of this information so everyone from all the sectors can be able to access this and we can work swiftly. We don't have so much time. We are now living the waves of heat. Many people are starting to say, okay, we need to prepare to deal with a lot of heat during the coming years, to be resilient during the coming years. I don't know about you, but I can't imagine that this will really keep on being worse. We need to refresh cities, make them more resilient, just like we will be learning during this workshop, so we don't depend so much on hydric systems or in systems in general, but make streets autosufficient, the neighborhoods, the cities, and finally the country. We need to go from the local to global scales. So I'm really happy that this can take place. I believe it's very relevant. We have to share and participate, and I will be here to support you and improve our quality of life and truly live the city. Thank you.
Wow, bueno, aquí
Wow,
es
thank you.
una calidad de panelistas
This is a
increíbles.
high quality of
Con
speakers.
esto quiero
With
remarcar
this,
el
I
nivel
want
de
to
conversación sobre la
say that the
regeneración
level
urbana
of the
es
conversation we're going to
gigante
have
y
on
es
urban
enorme.
regeneration is very high.
Increíble.
Many
Hay
people are
muchas
working on
acciones,
this.
muchas
Many people are
posibilidades.
thinking
Así
about
que
this, doing
hoy,
things. There are many
digamos, lo que
possibilities.
queremos
So
hacer
today, what
es
we want
ponerlos
to do
adelante,
is
¿cierto? Es
to put
darnos
them forward,
el brochazo de
to
ver
be able
cuánta
to see
reflexión ha habido.
how many
Voy a decir
things
solo un
have
minutico
already
algo
been
de mí, y es
happening.
que
I will just say
tengo
something
mi
very briefly
profesión,
about
que es
myself. I
aprender de
teach
la naturaleza
biomimetics, that's
para
learning from
emular
nature,
la manera en
in
que la
order to
naturaleza
emulate the
funciona en
way
nuestros
how
sistemas
nature
sociales.
works
Sí, biomímesis del
within
sistema social se
our
llama mi
social
curso aquí en la
system. That's
universidad
what I'm going to be
o en la UNIS.
teaching, what I teach here at the
Y traigo un
UCI,
pensamiento sistémico
and
también.
I bring the
Entonces,
systemic thought as
gran
well.
parte de las cosas que
So
estamos
a
haciendo
great part
ahora
of the
es
things that we are doing now
uniendo todo,
is
¿no?
joining,
Coordinando, haciendo
bringing
entonces
everything together,
colaboración
doing a
radical entre países,
collaborative,
¿no? En
radical
razonar la
collaboration
colaboración
process, a
entre
deeply rooted
todos
one,
para
collaborating
poder
all
avanzar en esto
together
que
in order to
significa
move forward
recuperar
in
la
what it means to
la
recover,
conexión del planeta
restore,
con nosotros adentro,
regenerate
porque el
the
planeta es algo
planet
que no
with
está aquí y
ourselves
queda
as part of
regenerándose
it,
de otra
because
forma, pero
the
la idea es
planet
que
can
estemos
just
nosotros.
kick us out
Entonces,
and regenerate
en esta
itself.
es
But the
una
idea is for
nuestra
us to remain
conversación.
here. So
Esta es
through
la
this
conversación
deep
a la que
reflections,
les estamos
that is
invitando a
the
todos y todas.
conversation we want to
Bueno,
invite you all
entonces
to
quiero
join.
primero hacer
But
esta
first,
introducción
I
de
want
quiénes
to
somos ahora,
invite
¿cierto?
you
Y
to
hace
get
que
to know each
sigamos,
other.
antes que decir qué es
So
regeneración urbana,
before
juntemos un
talking
tiempo de
about
regeneración
what
urbana.
urban regeneration is,
Vamos a
tell
crear
us,
unos
what do you
grupos
think urban
y aquí en
regeneration
el
is?
chat
We
les
will create some
pongo
groups.
un
Here
enlace
in the
a
chat,
un
I'm
mural,
sharing a link
¿cierto?
to create a
Que voy
mural.
a también estar presentando aquí con
I will be
ustedes.
sharing it here as
La
well
idea es que
on
todos
screen.
los que entremos
The
acá
idea is that
podemos
everyone who
empezar a
comes
reflexionar
in
qué es la
try to
regeneración urbana,
answer what
¿sí?
is
Aplicada.
urban regeneration,
Entonces,
applied
los
urban
temas,
regeneration for
si
you.
hacen falta
So we
temas,
can put some
no duden en poner un
subjects,
tema
add
y
them if you
rellenar
see they
textos donde
missing,
dice
and
add
fill in the
text o donde
texts
pueden
where you
hacer
can
doble
add
clic
texts.
y
You
empezar a
can double
escribir
click
temas,
and start
preguntas
writing
sobre los temas,
subjects, questions
simplemente
on
hacerse
the
parte.
subjects and
Pero
be
para hacerlo
part.
aún más interesante
But
esto,
in
más
order for
sencillo,
this to be even
vamos a
more
irnos al grupo
interesting
de
as an
3 o 4
exchange, we will
personas
break into small
y
groups of
la
3 or 4
dinámica de
people, and the
10 minutos
dynamics
solamente
of
va a ser
10 minutes
que
will
cada
be
uno
only
en un aliento, es
for
decir, desde
each
que
one
tome la respiración,
during one breath.
digan
So
así
take
como
one breath,
de
and
frente
as much as you can
y
say, speak,
no sé,
mention your
cuéntenme
name, where you
si
come
quieren
from,
y por qué
in
están
which
acá,
area do
¿no?
you
Como
live,
algo muy,
and
muy
why you are
rápido,
here.
en un aliento,
Something very brief,
las
in just
3
one
4
breath,
personas del grupo y
and the
después
people who are part
empiezan a
of
hablar
the
sobre
group
qué es esto de la
start
regeneración
talking
aplicada,
of what
poniendo
applied
notas, escribiendo como lo
regeneration
quieran
is.
hacer.
You can
Uso
write it
post-its,
down,
uso,
use
entonces,
post-its.
si
This
quieren
is a
que se
mural.
manden
So,
a los
Christian,
grupos, por
you
favor.
can send us to the groups. Urban regeneration is what he has seen in all of his travels. You've been able to move through cities, understanding what is going on. What does urban regeneration look like in the world? I had the joy of studying urbanism, and it's no doubt to me that the city is my I, it's my place of study. It's what passions me most to get to know a new city, getting lost in the streets without any direction. And in these different explorations, we've been having the joy of being able to visit. And that is where the idea of this workshop sprouted. We've been exploring two cities, as you know, from talking with people on in the cities is where the greatest alliances and transformations are born. So I'm.
¿Puedes silenciarte, por favor, para...
Can you silence your mic, Karina, please?
No, no estás.
Ah, no.
Es que se le fue la luz a Cari.
It's because she has no light. It's incredible that we always say that Mexico City is a miracle, one of the greatest and most beautiful miracles of the planet. It's in the most transparent region, according to several poems. These images we have, some drawn images, help us see what Mexico City was. It's a city that now existed and is called, sorry, we should still name her, the basin of the Nahuatl, because Nahuatl means near the water. So if we look at what the great Tenochtitlan used to be and compare it with what it is today, the city with the lake city, because it is a specific system of fresh water, salted and sweet water that connects all of the continent. I think, sorry, I have to share with audio. Now the city is like this. Our daily struggle to go from one place to the other. While it could be so simple, as simple. It's a vehicle diet to make the roads in real size, street dieting, but to be able to give universal access to all of the city, I believe it's one of the equity struggles, and the right to access to the cities, it is a universal right. We should be talking about this, to talk about the whole streets or the basin streets, like Herman says. It is a subject of being able to share within a biodiverse territory. A great city gives you many different options. And I love that memes help us educate on how Utrecht has been able to transform. This river was put away in 2000, and now in 2010, this transformation was finished. Utrecht, one of half of the things you move around is in bike. Seoul, it's a great river that taught me in a program partly narrated by Brad Pitt in PBS. They talk about 2004, where they were working on putting away a second floor to recover the rivers. And they took away other high buildings, recovering rivers by doing that. So it is a global tendency. We can say in Lyon also how a highway area is great, where you can just sit and have a beer. And Medellin, no doubt, the park of the Medellin River is a great place. among many cities that allow us to understand that Latin cities have all of the hype and the vibe to bringing knowledge, case studies on how urban regeneration is here to stay, and we need to consolidate it in order to have more greater success. To talk about Manzanares and the small villages, we always want to be fans of villages. They are also urbanities, and they deserve better streets. Many of our small villages don't have that. The whole of the street wants to be the update, and hopefully it could be of what a street could go, not only for us to move, but for us to have an universal accessibility to connect with all of the city, to have nature, and to be connected with the ecosystem. During years, we've been talking about living infrastructure, then green buildings, to talk as an engineer, because engineers are the ones that sometimes are the most stubborn ones, but when they finally understand in green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, and now the nature-based solutions, they see the efficiency and their beauty, and they fall in love with systems almost immediately. I'm sorry, Melly, I'm gonna say it, but maybe even more than biologists. Cities have been able to transform Copenhagen, Amsterdam. They were not like this. There is an index that show us that transformation is a principle of life, and daily decisions of a city to move in a different way. We were always talking about how in Mexico City and almost in any city, mobility is one of the keys to activate urban transformation, regeneration. So we see that it is the right to access. We can speak of Amsterdam or Copenhagen, and but Paris has more bicycle journeys than car. We see that other cities have up to 50% more mobility in bicycle. In Mexico City, there is a 76% more men going by bike, but sometimes in Copenhagen or in other places, more women than men drive bicycle. So it is possible. So as we integrate this in these systems that are brought together based in nature, we will explore also the different things we can do from home. But of course, our main focus is the space that connects us, therefore, urban areas, the streets, cities scaling up to bioregional and basin management. I couldn't say this if it was not from my love and passion for whole basins after a journey we made with Karin, where we saw how this could take place from village and we could bring it to the city. And once again, it's not difficult. Many of these graphics and the material we will see is around being able to help from the smallest scale, articulating it with streets, articulating different communities. Here we can see how Mexico City on the east, there are many more roads for bicycles. We could say the first one, the bicycle lane, thanks to the pandemic, we had our first bicycle lane. The most marginal part is the one that does not have access to this infrastructure, and it's the most marginal one. We need to create streets with REDS network, complete networks. And the material we've been talking about, prototyping through all these tactic actions, we've learned that tactic urbanism works to put some, draw some lanes, to create some experiences with limited mobility gives security. But we say paint isn't infrastructure, although it does help us to prototype community, to weave meeting community, and to be able to propose larger scale projects. The recovery of the Chusco River, to weave the city around living rivers have been our priority since always, and to be able to find the angle that can help us to interfere. And as our teacher Capra says, to create significant disruptions. The Piedad River creates workshops, regeneration workshops with Regenesis. That's when the Piedad River, it's not without academy that we don't evolve. That's why I love so much UCI, because from academy, ideas are birthed and are socialized, and they viralize in a good way, and they permeate within another structure of a public space, a wetland, because it's treating the heavy metals. And this marsh that was built, it's one of the best technologies that we can use to treat the sewage. So it would be great to start implementing it. But conversations afterwards is where we are stuck. So Calle is also a street of several games that help us play with whole communities in order to move the pyramid of mobility or traject. How we move within a city is what allows us to articulate ourselves in order to have a larger impact, an impact on a larger scale. And being able to impact our projects are key for rivers to return. When people ask me, so how are you doing with our living rivers? When I say, let's use the street in a good way, that's when we're gonna have living rivers, to have a deep feeling of belonging to places. Because sometimes with Regenesis, we'll have lots of understandings on this issue, and being able to understand cities as a basin, as a living being, an ecosystem that has evolved throughout its life, will give us the tools to understand what it is we can give to the city to help its development, its health, its regeneration. From which networks that create basin plans, if we could simplify somehow, I believe it's that, and that we can do all of it in a fun way. Among the materials, you'll see many materials, the comic, that help us translate ecology, urbanism, and complex things. That could be a game for children, a role game, card game, or lottery. We call it the Mexican bingo. It's a very fun visual bingo. Tools to go out and measure streets, tools to create common narratives. So there are things we want to reach, but first we need to dive into several conversations. And many of these things we're going to learn are tools to have better conversations, because if we play, we can learn much easier. So transform house by house from a way of using water that will pollute rivers to houses that treat and nurture artificial marshes is what we want in order to recover our urbanities as centers of biodiversities, the multi-species city, a city that will promote health and help you move because you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Seguro me pasé de tiempo, lo siento mucho.
I believe I used more time than I had to.
Muchas gracias, Elías.
Thank you very much, Elias.
Karina, tú quisieras como
Karina, you wanted to,
¿te gustaría
would you like to
como completar, complementar
complement,
tu perspectiva?
complete, share your perspective with us,
Estás en
please?
silencio.
Perdón,
You're
perdón.
muted.
Estamos aquí en la
I'm
misma-
sorry, since we're
Pues
at the
bueno,
same
un poco
place.
agregando a lo que comenta Elías, pues es el
Well,
esfuerzo
adding
de
to
toda la
what
ciudadanía
Elias
que ha
said,
detrás de
it's
estos
the
proyectos
effort of all of
específicos
the
y
civil
muchas veces esa ciudadanía no
groups
tiene ni
that what
conocimiento
has
de lo que
propelled these different projects. And very often people don't know what it is we can do. And the idea of this workshop is for all of us to try to be involved. I believe it's one of the most important elements for us as citizens to be involved from any space within the city. It is very relevant to really achieve our goals. And looking at the games that Elias was sharing, something that caught my attention was a boy saying more water systems. It is a very, very important issue here in Mexico City. I didn't have water for 3 weeks. I had to learn to use only 5 liters a day and recycle water several times a day. I never imagined I would have to do something like that. And now we all have been through that. And that's why water is so expensive now. We have to be very, very careful in order to subsist. Otherwise, we won't manage. So the games are incredible. Stickers are great. Everything's ready. So let's start with more questions. Which other questions are present? Yes, Patty. Just before we move into the question, I would like to make a small introduction. This is a creation process of urban regeneration movement on a global scale. And what we want now, we've been bringing together all the pieces, who's working, where is it being done. University for International Cooperation hosts us, aiming at promoting this type of actions, of regeneration actions, through a workshop that we want to launch in August. It's a regeneration workshop, urban regeneration. Elias will share the topics that we will go through for everyone who's here to have a specific space of taking a look at our cities to design with local communities and complements a larger process of urban regeneration. It is a process we're trying to move with these free meetings, with this connectivity within communities, and in this way move forward with specific processes from each place. And just like I showed you, Elias showed us a moment ago, we have developed a game. It's called Love Your Street, Ama Tu Calle. We are promoting this game to play, to redesign, rethink our cities. What is missing in our street? And I want to bring your attention to an important issue. When you're at home and when someone's gonna leave, people say, are you gonna go to the street? Are you gonna hang out on the street? So what is outside of the house? It's the street. The street is what brings us together in the urban areas with the territory. Elias is showing all these pedagogic tools, the comic, the images, and how we can truly play with our neighbors at the park to truly connect with the first thing we see when we walk out of the house, with whoever are there. So we are generating, I will give you the word in a moment, Carlos. I saw you raised your hands. We are generating a whole environment of possibilities, of crosses, creativity, generation of movement. And of course, we have all the obstacles we have to trespass, we have to cross, but we can do it together. We can take it much further. So let's open the mic with Carlos. Please, if you want to open your mic and ask your question. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I came to this event through an invitation I received from Esteban Echavarria, a friend I've been sharing with for a long time. And I'm not so much in the context, but parting from what I've been hearing, there is a very concrete thing that I would like to share, and it's that when we talk of regeneration of cities, I believe we should talk of regeneration of communities, because the city is the one that hosts the community. And the important thing is not the city, but the community. And when we talk, now that I see the presentation that Elias shared with us, I see that it shows very large cities. And it is all the examples are very interesting. But I did last year work for a company from Colombia that had me visit 38 parts of a department in a state from Colombia called Santander. And what I've learned, and something that strengthened my learning process, is that we need to understand that one thing are big cities and the smaller urban areas are a different thing. So in the Colombian case, 98% of these small municipalities are populations of less than 30,000 inhabitants. And the government has the same law for a city as big as Bogota or for a city of 15,000 inhabitants. And the situations are completely different. So for me, a strategy of regeneration of communities and cities focusing in a very different way on 98% of the smaller governments that compose a country like Colombia than the laws as they are designed for big cities like Bucaramanga, Bogota, Medellin. And I believe that this experience is very interesting because working on a smaller cities with the strategies of regeneration, we are in a better moment than doing it for larger cities. We are in a better moment because we don't have such large problems like in the big one. So problems are simple and smaller ones. And we learned from a very important Colombian man called Mario Calderon. He passed away a few years ago. He taught me some time ago that revolution for transformation of society needs to come from the outskirts towards the center and not from the center towards the outskirts. That's what I've been thinking of after what I've been listening to, but I'm very happy to see that this is being put on the table because the world we live in has no sense and it's not worth living it. That's why we need to move and build it in a different way. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Carlos, for what you've said. I always say micro to macro and macro to micro. Outskirts, yes, of course, that's where the river comes from, but then the urban part is where people see the river flowing, and after they know where it comes from, it's just like Lily said, from the countryside to the country, country to the countryside, to the city. I'm sharing this picture now. It's from a village in Cundinamarca, Colombia. It's a very small village called Utica. And they decided to plant trees to divide parking lots, and having shade and fresh areas. This is in a warm region. It is an intervention of public policy, but towards another urban design within the village. So just like this one, we have many more examples. Of course, it is important to keep in mind these different ways of governance that can take place among the different cities, small, big ones. There is another question on the chat. Elias, I would like you to answer it. Where is the perspective of whole streets from? Is it based on European cities or how was it born? Yeah, I'm writing that on the chat. I heard it from the Technical Institute.
Sí, de hecho lo creamos en el
Yes,
ITDP,
we created
solo
it
que en
in
el ITDP no
ITDP,
teníamos
but back then
incluida
we
la
didn't
infraestructura
have,
verde ni la
we hadn't included the
infraestructura azul.
green
Con la
infrastructure
infraestructura
or the
verde,
blue
la
infrastructure.
infraestructura
With the
verde se
green
nos dijo porque
infrastructure,
teníamos árboles en
we did
algunas
talk about
partes,
it a bit
pero era
because
desde una
we were
perspectiva
using
más
some trees,
metafísica y
but
no
it was
tanto
from a
como de
more landscape
regeneración. Y
perspective
por el otro
than
lado, otro
recovery
elemento que tanto Elías
perspective.
como yo
And another
incorporamos en nuestra
element that
propuesta
we
fue el
both
tema de la
had
infraestructura
incorporated
azul,
to
que
the
es el
whole
tratar
street
de
is
empezar
the
a
blue
construir y de
infrastructure to
rescatar
start
cuerpos de agua y entonces sí, verdaderamente
working
tener una
on
calidad
bodies
completa.
of
O sea,
water to
nació el
have a
concepto
truly
como un tema de
whole
movilidad
street.
y
It
actualmente lo
started as a
adecuamos
mobility
a dos
concept, and
modelos
now we
y
have been
implementar
adapting
las
it to
calles
a
en cualquier
model to
ciudad,
follow
poblado,
in all
localidad,
streets of
pueblito, lo que
localities,
sea.
villages, cities, everything.
Súper.
And the materials you can find on the website that I will share in a moment. It's called amatucalle.com. You have a great glossary of the elements. Within the 4 elements we want to shift: universal accessibility, mobility systems, public spaces, and I forgot one. Public spaces, mobility systems, and nature-based solutions. And the question, Paula put the question on the chat. What is the role of the education institutions in this process? I could say that it's one of the most important roles. Since 2016, I've been teaching architecture in Vivero or Centro or different universities. I believe deeply in the role of education for the transformation of society. And since it is not within a limited scope, it allows us to explore radical ideas. Not long ago, with a speaker, a dear teacher, we were talking about how can we be excited about what we don't know? And how can we generate from this not knowing we are going through? Because we will talk about crisis, polycrisis, meta-crisis, however you want to name it. But how can we allow it to transform us? And I believe that the role of creativity, design, and education, artistic expression in all of their levels allow us to understand new things, to generate empathy, open minds, to move into hearts.
Ahora sí que miles de diferentes opciones, ¿verdad? Pero el enfoque
To generate thousands of different options, but the scope will be to create better urbanities from villages to cities and their relation with the countryside. We cannot divide. If you separate the element of everything, then it won't be everything anymore. Yes, the presentation of what we call urban regeneration comes from all these perspective of urban interventions, redesigning cities, being out in the street. This image you were sharing, and also what Karina named of the river, of the picnic by the riverside that you organized. You organized an activity to calling the attention to the territory that also has rivers. Cities have rivers. They hide away the rivers. That's why we think very often there are no rivers, but it's because they are under the ground. So the effort of talking about a river, imagine how great it would be to live near a healthy river. We can go out and have a walk by the river. We can picnic with our family. In Bogota, until the 1950s, there were lakes because it is a great savanna in the mountains with wetlands and lakes. And my grandparents went to picnic by the lakes. and they were hidden under the city in order to build. And now the problem with these neighborhoods is that whenever it rains, everything's underwater. Of course, they were built on top of the lakes. So this process is also to remember what the territory is like. Water has a memory, and urban territories also have water and lakes. So to connect to this process with very specific actions is fundamental for us to achieve with regeneration processes within the cities. There is another question: how can we integrate food security with the regeneration of the city? Lily, you've been working on this. Would you like to comment, say something?
Sí, no, bueno, eso es una gran pregunta
It is a great question, and it's something I believe that through our experience, it has been a multi-factor, because on one side, everything has to be a forest. We need to forget about this idea of only producing because of what the market needs. And by this, I mean that for many projects, maybe it's about when we see what the food crisis is not a calorie crisis. It's a nutrition and nutritional density crisis. Working with native plants, all of Central America is one of the epicenters of the place where agriculture started. And it's very interesting to think that all cities started as agriculture. When we see the process from a nomad society to a society that started settling, came to happen because of the agricultural society. So all cities on a world level have the capacities to grow food. These places were chosen because they had access to water, to rivers, topographic benefits that could sustain projects of agricultural infrastructure. We are now in a moment of re-understanding and reliving this. To work, for example, in Mexico with quelite, it's a Nahuatl word to refer to an edible plant. Besides the 350 varieties of this plant that we cannot find off the market, we see that the agricultural market is focusing on producing pretty things that you can transport for a long distance. When you start growing in these smaller spaces, you need to focus on nutritional density. And we need to think of how we can work with endemic native plants in the space we have. It's something much easier than we think. It's something we'll be seeing through our workshop, how we can generate compact forested crops that have a nutritional density. To give you an idea, there are so many plants like the chaya plant that has almost 20% of vegetable protein. It has a great amount of amino acids and vitamins. It is something we will be focusing on during this workshop to see how we can go from home systems, but especially community collective systems, from rooftops to the transformation of parks. And it is something that our experience and the projects we've been working on, that we can perfectly produce the amount of vitamins a family needs, a community needs. We do not need to focus on produce, grains, and calories. It's enough if we have relation with the countryside. Some things can be produced in the countryside, others in the city. So we just need to understand what the best way of using the space is. And we need to see public space as a green infrastructure, and also having systems that can be used from the rooftops of your house coming together with your neighbors to see how you can use these spaces. There are many spaces within cities that can be activated. It is a great question, and I would say that by focusing on nutritional density and working with systems that are more and more perennial and forestal. Thank you very much, Lily. The question is a great question indeed. Thank you, Daniela. Very complex one. And it makes me think of, I would like us to move through the different panels we are organizing for the workshop to go deeper into each one of these subjects. Elias, can you please show the presentation?
Miremoslo, porque también nos
Let's
hace nos
go through it because it helps us think what the subjects are.
Estás en silencio tu micrófono.
Your mic is in silence.
Ahí está, perdón. Es que cuando pongo play no me deja lo
When
demás. También a recalcar que como saben,
So, as you know, it will be in Spanglish with simultaneous interpretation.
virtuales.
It will be 12 virtual sessions.
El tema, un break, y luego
the subject, a break, then dialogue and work in small groups, just a bit like the groups we had a moment ago. Sorry, Elias, we couldn't hear you. Can you please go back for a moment? We couldn't hear you well. Couldn't hear the talk of the exploration. Yes, so we will have 12 sessions with a simultaneous interpretation, and you will be able to vote on 2 cities we will visit by the end of the workshop. You will be able to participate from the vegetable. If you can't come to the trip, we will give you a protocol, so you can also join us later on. So the idea is that we will have this at least twice a year and to have multiple explorations going to different cities. This is the calendar. It will be at on Wednesdays, 2 p.m. Mexico City, 1 p.m. Costa Rican time. City, I believe it's the international time. We'll see from opening, dialogue. We will talk about integral facilitation. We have Diane Musho just confirmed her participation. She's not sure if she's going to be here the first or last session, but she will join us. Please look at her books she learned with Ken Wilber. She is a great person. We will also have more material from Calle and Urban Regeneration. All this material will be available for you online. You can check it anytime. And if you have any other ideas of a special guest you'd like to have, a video, a book, the idea is that we can truly weave a base of information of our first generation that will open up the road for coming generations. And in the second session, we will talk about the basin with Jean, who works a lot in Guatemala, with John Takara, Sandra, who's working in urbanism and design from San Salvador. You've already met John. He's one of my super favorite writers. We will have very rich conversations, and thanks to the UCI processes, we will have also, I don't know, Meli, like invitations or a workshop or invitations to explore your basins, to make graphics, maps, to write poems for it. We believe that the expressions of getting to know territory are multiple and diverse. And what we would like is you to find your own expression in your territory. We will talk about living systems with one of my favorite teachers of life, Capra, and Stefan is not so well, but we hope he will be able to join us. And also our dear Luis Zambrano. We will be able to learn all about from Meli, who's a biologist, and Gus Madrid, who's working hardly in APA, Hidalgo. And besides preparing cereals for great beer, he's been working on green infrastructures in different infrastructures of the cities. As you see, there is a lot of material and work behind that we will gladly share with you if you wish. But I don't want to go past the time. And once again, in the regeneration session, Bill, the great Bill, will accompany us. He will revitalize this regeneration issue in different communities. He was promoting different community projects, one of the Regenesis member, one of the great pillars and regenerative work. He has a great community of students all over the globe of regenerative practitioners, all speakers, including Lily's class.
Agroforestería, pero en digital, para que llegue a
Of
todos.
agroforestry in a digital way, so it can reach all of the planet. It's great. So you can go deeper and deeper. We will really just look into a bit of each one of the subjects that could become really big roads of learning. So we can start going more and more into the subject. Do you want to talk about the participants? We want to invite you, of course, to tell us what you are doing. Well, if you want, I can talk a bit about this fifth session. It will be on the election that always excites me a lot because we will decide where we'll go to see the examples of urban regeneration. Yes, let me add something. We decide that during the first session, and in that way we'll be able to organize the travel. Here we are inviting people to present their projects. So we've already have decided by now. Okay, so in this session, we will receive proposals and visions of the participants of the workshop, the masterclass. And from there on, we will announce which city we will visit. No? Isn't it that way? So explain.
Mucha risa las confusiones de cómo decidir un viaje.
The confusions on how to decide a collective trip.
Inscribirse, van a poder votar.
When we register, you can vote which of the 6 cities you want to visit. You want or can visit because you're close or different reasons, because it's your interest or the budget we have. So we will vote when we register, and the first session we'll see what the voting will be like. The idea is to decide that, so we'll have enough time to plan the urban exploration well that will take place in November. I'm going to look at the calendar briefly, timeline, to invite people from the cities. We already have our hosts from the cities. That's why you were confused, Cari, because we want to invite people to join us. Now the confusion is whether it was on the votation, but so that day we will announce which city has won, right? And in this session, important to say that the idea is that each one of us within our neighborhood and our area where we live, we will be mapping and recognizing, putting into practice all the things that we will be learning. And that is how the 3 of us will be accompanying you during the workshop. So these presentations refer to that, on how you have explored your city, what happens, which are the triggers, which things do you like, what would you like to work on more, which actions could be generated. All these questions will be the work we will be able to do, accompanied by all the speakers, receiving information from all the people that have been thinking on these subjects in order to, by the end of the workshop, have an important basis of the place where you live, your neighborhood, your city.
Como base de la UCI, mucho de lo que
And
hemos
as base of UCI, a great part of what you've been talking about is the importance of regenerative agriculture will teach us to urban regenerators a bit, because that's also where the regeneration has become something global. And just like Lily said, transformation of these products is important for them to create value, generate value, community, good tastes, and nice things. We were talking a lot about the reason why regenerative agriculture has been so important. It's because it's really delicious and healthy and nutritious food. Cari, mobility, and
Ok, pues en movilidad vamos a tener.
in mobility we will
Vamos a tener a Ji Shin,
we will
que
have
justamente
Ji
fue una parte
Shing,
muy importante para la
which was a
regeneración
very,
del
very
río
important
Shin,
part of the regeneration of a river in Seoul,
Ella
Korea. She has worked as part of the government as a consultant. She's done many things that she will share with us in this session, September 25th. And it's not confirmed yet, but we will also have Hinonori Kato. He's a teacher from the Tokyo University in Japan, and he knows perfectly how transport systems work in that country and in Tokyo. As we said previously, it is the largest one in the world. It has 40 million inhabitants, and it has many challenges, among which the possibility is that we can learn many things from this city.
Ese tamaño, e incluso
because that size, there are so many similar things with Mexico City, which is something that turns out to be very interesting and allows us to see that it is a great example. And I hope that it will be the choice of city to visit. But in general, the things we're going to talk about is first how to understand what mobility is, which are the components of mobility. Mobility is part of urbanism. Especially during these last years, it's been really trending because before we didn't have diverse transport systems. We only had the metro, and nowadays we have streets only for people going, walking, like Madero. We have bicycle roads that we never thought it was going to happen, but it is a reality.
Estas complejidades.
We'll see all these complexities, and we will understand how the economic activities work. Why do cities have a tendency to have very specific places where everyone wants to go to? Why do we have these dynamics? We will understand a bit how that subject works. And besides that, we will see why the public space is such an important element within mobility, understanding why is it necessary, why the larger and more populated cities are more.
Por otro lado, también vamos a ver cómo
we will also see how whole streets work. Like Elias mentioned, we will look deeper into the different components of a whole street. And in general, we'll have also the universal accessibility subject, which is a very important one to ease mobility within a city, and we'll have Steve Perkins, who is a specialist who works on the USD, and has been working in many different places, supporting mobility and transport logistics in many places of the world, implementing specific projects within countries that compose the OSD. And he works at the Institute International Transport Forum, where many of these subjects are approached, a great teaching that can be shared by him. And we will also be with these two women, Katia de Artigues and Karina Arvizu. No, Karina Arvizu just sent her confirmation. She just sent her mini bio, and we're waiting for Katia's confirmation. As you know, Katia was a subsecretary of Sedatu. Before, she worked in the Inter-American Development Bank in the transport division, just like I did a few years ago. I was in Washington, D.C., and she in Mexico, but we know each other since then. And she's developed also many projects around urban design and mobility. Therefore, the experience she has to bring in to the universal accessibility topic is very important. It will be very interesting to see how this will be developed, especially to see the universal accessibility. We will understand how the paradigm is like of all the inhabitants, population, vulnerable populations, the problematic faced whenever you want to move within cities, gender issue, mobility, care, something very trending, many people are talking about, are very important topics we have to think of when we are thinking of a city that make us feel within a democratic, accessible space, inclusive space, not necessarily always manifested on the territory. So I believe it is a very important topic we do have to approach. It is a main pillar of resilient cities, of regenerative cities. So these two subjects will be part also of the workshop, and let's move on.
Elías, estás tú en silencio.
Ay, perdón. Perdón, sé que estamos un
Sorry,
poco...
I know we're over the time, so I'm gonna move further to other subjects. We're gonna move of activism and art and defense of the territory, create inspiration to defend our territory, and articulate movement to create change in the territory. It's probably one of the most interesting things we have. I would say I am more an activist than an architect. So Gemma Santana will be joining us there, who's here as a speaker, and a dear teacher and artist, Arturo Ortiz, who's doing a lot of work on the mapping and the creation of maps of art sculptures through subjects that are very important. The road security, fracking, feminicides, food security, all of these are subjects that each one of them is terrifying. And if we can understanding from different perspectives, so more people are not afraid, is the main thing here. We'll have another session on public policies with great participation. Arely Carreon, she has been working on mobility law, of promoting a lot of security law on the country. Sergio Fajardo will tell us about Medellin, and also Edgar Mora, who works in Costa Rica, and Edward, who will help us have a very rich and diverse conversation on different aspects of incidents and public policies. Sandra will see, she's going through a moment of writing so she won't be available. Integral projects, we've been talking of how we can integrate. I believe it's one of the greatest words, Javier Leal, who's part of the in plan and talk of what has been going on in Monterrey, and part of the team of Taller 13, who will help us understand the importance of shifting from 2D to 3D and different ways. Another great visualizer, Mark Reger, is about to confirm it's some kind of mid-journey, but human. And AI, but human, who communicates beautifully all his projects. And the last session, Meli, maybe you would like to complement? We will see different logistic topics and see what the follow-up is of on your projects and expressions, and planning the trip, details of our journey together, logistics. Maybe there's something else to say or something to remove.
Estas son las ciudades que
So
hemos
these are the cities we've been thinking of as options for the urban exploration. Finally, the idea is to learn on all of these different topics of urban regeneration, to understand the different perspective, to appropriate from our urban area in order to mobilize local processes, and to have a collective integration of that learning process through a travel, a urban exploration. Sometimes when we want to go on a trip, we go to the journey, to the jungle, to the countryside, but to have this perspective of the cities allow us to understand urban territories from an exploration point of view of reconnection, of a deep connection with basins. Right now, I'm living next to the basin where I was born, next to the mountains of my basin. That is something that allows me to reconnect with a deep memory. So the idea is to do that. Because of costs or preference, or just like Elias was saying, we might, several of us, maybe it will be difficult to choose, but we will do it collectively to have a first approach. And the idea of this is that it's not just to follow a workshop. The idea is that we are creating a community of practice of urban regeneration. And it is through participating within the community that we will be able to go to the exploration and follow the workshop. Maybe this time we'll go to the workshop and not to the exploration, but maybe you'll want to join the next exploration we'll do. Maybe some cities will start popping up and we'll be able to visit and see which other things are taking place. So this is the beginning of a large practical community we are tuning into. So absolutely an invitation open, a large invitation. I will just briefly show the website for the information. Many people have been asking on the chat about the information. So if you allow me to share, Elias, I will show you this website. It is a landing page to ask for further information that will be shared with you. It has an introduction for who is this urban regeneration course meant for. This is for the workshop. The information for you to read. These are the costs. We try to make this accessible for as many people as possible. So we have 60% off for students or organizations,
But if there are organizations, we all know there are local governments that have to be on the same level. If you know people from the local governments, you're in contact with them, bring them, have them invited to move the regenerative narrative within institutions, and they would pay the full cost of the workshop. So just for you, when you ask for the information, when information is asked, just talk about the different categories in order to access the price that is meant for you. This is very basic information. And we have also Ama tu Calle, Love Your Street. It is the website where we have been bringing together all the different activities that have been taking place from Calle Completa, Whole Street. Of course, we are all invited. These are some of the actions we can do, but there are many other actions that can be done. It is fundamental to understand what is going on, what is it we can do. Those of you who are here and are listening here in Mexico, this is a departure point for you to connect with what is already happening locally. And here you can find the game, the comic, the workshop also.
Y les quiero... Dime.
Déjame nada más reforzar aquí rapidísimo.
Just allow me to say something else. Is that here you can find the guidebook we're going to be exploring together during the first session, but you can find all the free information to download the game materials and the technical booklets and start playing now. So it's about generating these tools and make them as accessible as possible. Exactly. So this is a great impulse for the region community on an urban level to move into action. There is something else I want to show you. This website, Colombia Regenerativa, we are we are creating processes of collectivization of the people who are acting in Bogota to regenerate the cities, to offer local services within each street and neighborhood. And we've just launched this. It is a poster to regenerate cities and to generate connection with the resources that are near. So here you can find the instructions. The idea is to generate posters. Here we have some examples of a neighborhood for them to have QRs and to say, oh, I can buy organic greens from someone who brings things from the countryside, or I can find composting areas within the cities and so on. So this is also another type of actions that are being developed within the community of urban regeneration. I'm sharing the link on the side, on the chat, to promote actions. What is it we can do? We can play the game, we can create a poster, we can walk the neighborhood or our village and say, but let's support the lady who prepared jams, or support the local composting process that is already going on. So the regeneration movement in the cities is to do all these actions and start channeling how we can share information with all of our strength, really moving to regenerating cities and activate our greatest potential. We want to do, all of us who want to live in a healthy way. both in the city and on the countryside, because there is a relationship with the countryside. I don't know if there is something else or a comment. Karina, is there something you want to say? Gemma, is there anything you want to say? I have a doubt, Melina. People are asking, how many people, what is the limit of the workshop? How many people maximum could join us? For the workshop, it is a workshop. There is no limit. No, there is no limit. No, and we can work in groups. So within the workshop, we'll have practice groups, hopefully because you're near to each other, or relation, or by subject, or experience complements. But the idea is to have different learning communities to create groups that will bring us to specific actions and projects. Thank you very much. And also, Melina, we didn't put it on the literature, but we have talked about this. It's to give some groups certain follow-up besides the panels. We would be very happy to do that, to have at least one session with each group that is being formed to complement. And once again, hopefully this will be something that will keep on growing, and maybe people from the first generation will be able to accompany us during the coming ones and to weave a network. So to all the people who registered for today's talk, we will be inviting you to join a community of practice. So from now on, we can start to put these things on the table, to connect with each other. It's not just like a commercial for a workshop. It's truly the creation of a community. We have the support of the Academy, of some communities that are promoting urban regeneration on all of Latin America and the world. Later on, we'll do one of these sessions, also more international. So we will invite you then as well for you to join us then. So thank you very much. I don't know if there are any more questions or comments to continue. Is there anything you want to say, Elias? There is another question on the cost of the travel. Maybe we should first decide where we want to go, see how many people want to join the travel, and organize some structures to simplify the journey as a group. And the cost is for the follow-up and the workshop, but the cost of the trip will be different. But see you there, and we're gonna have a great time getting to know people from each city, getting to know incredible projects, and hopefully people who are in position, in capacity, who have the capacity of doing this, to access people from local governments and invite them, bring them to these spaces so they can bring this knowledge, and in that way we can shift structures from outside, from the activism, but also from within through knowledge. Well, that's great. Welcome, everyone, all of you, and thank you very much for this amazing session. We will leave you. Enjoy your afternoon, your morning, your night, wherever you might be, and see you next time. And whenever you hear us, anywhere on the planet. Thank you very much. You are all very welcome, and thank you once again. We'll stay in touch.